Dopamine swipe. Dopamine swipe. Follow us.
What is going on, beautiful people? It is the 817 podcast. Jimmy and I are back and ready to talk about a lot of interesting news. We got a lot of great stories and conversations to hit. So much that Jimmy showed up early to the pod.
I was excited, ready to go.
He was ready to rock. And honestly, it was a busy week of work. And so I was like, man, I was procrastinating on the homework. And I was like, man, what are we going to do here? And there is a ton to talk about.
There really is a lot of big news and really a lot of wins for Fort Worth this week.
Yeah, I honestly feel like this was like I'm a proud Fort Worthian week kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good week for the 817.
Yeah, we had, hitting the things we talked about last week. The government officials look like they declined making the 3% raise.
Yeah, the county commissioners court voted last Tuesday and declined the 3% raise for government officials, which we talked about last week. And I think it was a good call. Really, I mean, that's half of the revenue that Fort Worth has lost this last year. So that could go a long way towards getting the economy going again.
Yeah. And speaking of like revenue, right, we're also, I mean, a lot of our big stories is about how Fort Worth is positioning itself to find revenue in different ways. I mean, we got the rodeo right here in Fort Worth and Arlington, which, was in Las Vegas, and but now the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo is going to be hosted here at Globe Life Field, December 3rd through 12th, and it's going to be cool. I mean, I think that's super big opportunity for us, big dollar revenue gain. What do you have for that?
Yeah, so if you are not an avid rodeo follower,
like myself,
like both of us, you obviously know about the Fort Worth Rodeo that happens every year. That's a huge tourist boom for the city. But every year, the National Rodeo has their big finals in Las Vegas, which typically brings about $200 million worth of revenue to the city.
Estimating 100 million, which I think is a safe estimate for us.
I mean, that's a lot. Globe Life Park, with their social distancing measures, can fit 15,000 people in it, which is around what they have at the event every year for each event. So it's 10 days long. The main event is happening in Arlington, but then all of their smaller events will happen in the stockyards and in Fort Worth. So combined for the area, it's a lot of revenue.
It seems to me, man, I mean, I love this part about Fort Worth because I'm just a big component that today cities have to have. It's like what makes it unique or sticky and what makes people want to travel there. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Fort Worth is really, if we're looking at the other five major large cities, we kind of are holding the Texas flair, so that to these outside people who say, I want to experience Texas, Fort Worth to me is the city you need to come to, but still provide all the modern stuff. And I know that's something you're concerned, not concerned, but you think we should intentionally be thinking about. How do we get all these people to not just think Sundance Square and Stockyards when they visit in December?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing is how do we expand the tourism market outside of the stockyards and the conference center in downtown. So I think that could be something that we push the city on right now with this rodeo is, hey, this isn't just about businesses in the stockyards, in the new Mule Alley. Like, let's get these people out and about into where the local businesses are and really start to give them a massive bump in revenue. My favorite paragraph from the story, I'll read it. Ron Price, Arlington Convention and Visitors Bureau President and CEO, estimated the impact could be at least $100 million for Fort Worth and Arlington. There was little to no mention of Dallas during Wednesday's announcement at Globe Life Field.
Shots fired. I love that. Yeah, I was like, I think important that we hold rodeo and Fort Worth and Texas. That's us.
Yeah, I think so too.
Historically, it's us.
Yeah. And even though we want to have this push that the city is backing of being the modern West is still part of that. Yeah. And if that's going to get people to the city, I think that we can also push to show them the modern side of that too.
Do we know if what the lineup is for like musicians or artists? Do we have that yet?
No, I have no idea. But we know a lot of great Fort Worth local artists that I think would be awesome to expose those tourists to. Lou Charles was the one who wrote and rapped the song for that commercial that they're putting out. And so, I mean, I feel like this is right up the alley of people that they are trying to push and prop up in Fort Worth.
Really great news and really great work. What is your thoughts, though? I mean, with what is your opinion on Arlington and Fort Worth relationship to one another? How do you think we play together in the 817 county?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think that Fort Worth could have a lot of opportunity with hosting those people and getting them outside of the Arlington bubble. Like Arlington obviously has a little bit more expensive hotels and everything right in that area because you're there in the action. So, I mean, what if Fort Worth had a bus system or a train system that went straight from downtown into downtown Arlington so that people could stay here, go to events there? I feel like there is a good relationship there that could offer a lot of economic opportunity to both cities.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting just because I also like the difference between the campuses, from TCU to UT Arlington. And honestly, there's a couple little sneaky coffee shops and things showing up and like Arlington Main Street that I really think has some flair to it.
Yeah, and I think that Arlington is looking to Fort Worth for how do you develop your downtown area well. Like I know that area right off of UT Arlington, they're looking to make more artistically driven with local artists. And so I feel like there's a natural partnership between the two cities that could easily expand into these major events.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts about Meadowbrook is being able to be on the road and see AT&T Stadium driving one way. Yeah. And then you look the other way, you see TMP Station. Somehow we got to make it happen, right? Like you said, like how do we connect?
Yeah.
And I know you're really big about that on, I know we were talking about Kansas City being modern, doing trains and stuff like that. So I know there's talks about it's possible.
Yeah.
Right? So
for sure. And so even this week, Kansas City got more federal money to expand their trail car system. That's something that they built in 2016. I know typically for me, when I think of public transportation systems, I'm thinking of Boston, New York, Chicago, all these places that have had it there for a long time. It feels like cities missed the window, but that's not true. Kansas City started building this out in 2016. They're receiving more federal money to expand it into their suburbs this year. Like, how does Fort Worth get in on that action? How do we build out a comprehensive public transportation system where, I mean, we live one exit, two exits outside of downtown, and it's not easy to get into downtown on the bus. Yeah. Like, I should be able to walk to the end of my street, hop on a bus, and have an easy way into downtown.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we just talked about how much potential Fort Worth has of I mean, with the Trinity River, we were talking about like that needs to be, how do we implement not just easy public transportation, but easy access to public nature areas,
for sure,
recreational areas. I mean, we have the infrastructure and the raw talent. If we were, a young athlete or something, we have the raw talent, and now we just need to like really fulfill it out and be intentional. And that's always my fear of like these big events and what probably, Arlington struggles with as well is just like the corporational feel that sometimes gets in a way and like really wrecks things. And I feel like that's such a great example is the Riverwalk in San Antonio. I mean, if that was actually localized and committed to the identity of San Antonio, rather than just like a place for visitors to show up and leave, it would be, it'd be really cool. And I'm afraid of that. I mean, a part of me feel like that's happening in the stockyards, but why?
100%.
Yeah. But what's great about it, for what's lucky for us on the end is like stockyards is kind of north. So why they messed all that up, that means that it's not in the middle of our main street like it is for San Antonio.
Yeah. But the flip side of that is these big events bring in the revenue to make those things happen. And so how can we focus the energy towards these events, make them really great experiences so that the people connected within those industries say, hey, we did this in Fort Worth. It was awesome. We didn't have any issues. Like, we would 100% do there again. And so then other people say, oh, okay, like, we'll give them a look that we hadn't before. Then that gives us the opportunity to use that revenue towards more quality public services in the area.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that also kind of leads to, I know we're talking big business and we got to be conscious that there is the small business grants out through the CARES Act.
Yeah.
That Fort Worth is delivering, and that's here now. And that's that leftover money. Let's talk about that. I know you're familiar with it, as like Granbury Theater was able to talk about even get started earlier when the first round came, which was not, I feel like, people weren't aware about it.
Yeah. So Fort Worth set aside $15 million in CARES Act funds to support local small businesses. The first round that they gave out, I agree. I don't think that many people knew about it. It was based on employee size. So if you had, I believe, fewer than 5 employees, you were eligible for $5,000. If you had, it was either 6 to 10 or 6 to 15, you get $7,500. If you had more than 15, you could get $10,000, which isn't a ton of money for especially those bigger companies. But it was there. They gave away about $6 million to, I think, over 800 businesses. Yep. Now there's about $9 million left that last Tuesday they opened up the applications for. If you're looking for a little bit of intel on that, they had some technical issues, so they're supposed to open at 3. It wasn't until about 3:35 that you could actually get into it. I would say that I finished the application around 4:10, 4:15. So it's really easy, does not take a lot of effort, and is an opportunity for small businesses to make up to 1.5 months worth of revenue pre-COVID. The only caveats are you had to be open and I believe make at least $15,000 in revenue in 2019. So new 2020 businesses are not eligible. But if you are a bar or a business that had extended closure, I believe you are eligible for up to 3 months of revenue. So head to the Fort Worth website. It is all over the place on there. It's been all over social media, all over the news. They've done a really good job at getting the word out this time.
Yeah, looking at and they're giving priority to bars and restaurants that were forced to close. So the other big thing to know is like you must demonstrate that there is a financial impact to your business since March 13th when the coronavirus was declared.
Yeah, so basically what they have you enter is last year's revenue from January, February, and then your revenue by month for March through either July or August, and demonstrate the loss there. So for us, I know that, we lost 90% of our business. Like, yeah, you can't go to the movies for the majority of the summer, really any of that time. And so that's a pretty big number for us. So restaurants, in a lot of cases, I know maybe a little bit smaller, but bars that have had to be completely closed basically since March, there's an opportunity for 3 months revenue there.
Yeah. And so what is your thoughts of it being attempted by revenue this time compared to employees last time? What do you see kind of how that impacts?
Yeah, I definitely think that obviously it could provide a lot more stimulus because there is potentially more money that you could get. The flip side of that is that not as many businesses can get something. So where 800 businesses got something in the first round, let's say the average is $30,000 that they give out per business. Yeah. That's about 300 businesses. So less than half of the number that got it last time. It'll be interesting to see how they prioritize that. If they do it based on revenue lost. For the businesses that do get it, I think there is potential to get more of a stimulus there, which is a good thing, but it may not be as spread out as it was before.
Yeah, and I think where my concerns, and you have a better perspective on this, is all the reaching that I feel like some of our newer areas are doing to make it modern, to make it, it's like, hey, we're here and we're early to the show. So our revenue may not be that strong because we're still an up and coming area in the community, but those fixed costs are still there. So I'm interested to see maybe what that does for those businesses.
Yeah, and I would say the Foundry definitely falls into that. Really, I would say anywhere outside of South Main, the South Side, Clear Fork, Sundance Square, and the Stockyards falls into that. Maybe you could include West Bend in there, but even that's up and coming.
Yeah.
But with the only criteria being having fewer than 500 employees, like that's a big company. And I doubt that they would handle it where they gave a 500,000 employee company $500,000, but it feels like I would have loved for this to be contained to like 100 or 50 employee companies to really drive the idea of it being for local small businesses.
Yeah.
But either way, I think that the team behind it is doing a really great job of getting the word out. And I mean, $9 million injected into small businesses is a big win for the area.
I don't know how you feel about the business stuff, but I feel like I'm pleased. I think the part now, I'm ready to get the part where I'm anxious about, and we were talking about before, and that's the politics, November.
For sure.
Our county, law and order.
Law and order.
All caps.
I'm surprised that nobody is making a Law and Order style spin-off series called like all caps Law and Order, where like everything is just screamed the entire time. I feel like that would be a great comedy series right now.
This is more of a Texas story, but Tarrant, man, we have 5, House seats up for grabs, and Governor Abbott is staking out that simple law and order campaign that is just easy for Republicans to kind of attach to. And the Democratic message is just difficult to attract, I think, in our area. Rice University political science professor Mark P. Jones quoted in the Star Telegram that as long as Governor Abbott, avoids some of the racist undertones of President Trump's law and order campaign, he should be able to boost the votes for Republicans. I don't know what your takes there. We were talking about the zoning and all that stuff and how important this year is for Texas politics, even over national politics.
Yeah, and with Tarrant County having 5 state house seats up for grabs, 2020 is a really big election there. The Texas House will get to redraw district lines this coming year for the next decade, which will go a long way towards what Texas looks like for the coming decade. In front of me, just because I knew that there were some egregious examples in Harris County down in Houston. If you want to see the issue with gerrymandering, just Google Houston congressional districts.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, these are parabolas, snakes. I think I see a seahorse in here. But those districts can be redrawn by the Texas House this coming year. And so with 5 seats up for grabs in Tarrant County, that the House is very close. That could easily flip it one way or the other. So, Texas has been purple moving blue. That would really accelerate the path to blue. And so there is a lot of focus that is being put on Tarrant County because of those 5 seats this year.
I'm still a believer that even though we're a millennial ran podcast that is obviously more progressive, we are voting for Joe Biden. We are clear in the water of where we stand. But I still am convinced that Donald Trump is and his messaging is working, and specifically here in Texas. And it is stressful because law and order, we are in 2020, and the fact that same language is working today is just, me and being new and fresh and trying to be innovative. I hate when we don't innovate. And that is it's just sad that's still sticky. And also what it really means is just like, I mean, watch anyone who wants to back the words law and order, just watch the documentary 13 about the 13th Amendment, and just watch that documentary and really think about what law and order means, because oftentimes that doesn't mean what we think it means in a sense of safety for our neighborhoods. I just wish we can somehow not live in that fear of law and order anymore, because now your millennials and Gen Zs are more multiracial, look different than you. And yeah, it's a safe way to say I'm scared of color people.
Yeah, it preaches perceived comfort. And I say perceived because it's not actually comfortable. Like, diversifying communities does not make communities unsafe. Like, that is a bold-faced fabrication. It is not real. It's not based on anything. But when you can tap into the emotional side of, like, I want to protect my family, I want to protect my kids, I want to protect my stuff, like, that's what they are able to do. And that's what this messaging that Abbott is putting out right now really does. And it's hard to combat, because in a lot of the ways you're trying to fight logic and statistical rationale with emotions, and the two just aren't on the same wavelength. It's completely wrong, but it's messaging that seems to be going a long way, which is interesting because, I mean, MJ Hagar is a military veteran running for a seat in Texas. One of the candidates for a seat in Tarrant County is also a military veteran and a female. So these are people that you would think appeal to the suburban voter in a lot of ways. They almost have their own messaging, like, thrown back in their face as a negative towards them, which makes the whole law and order thing even more ridiculous, where we are acting like our military veterans do not have the safety of Americans and Texans in mind. It's completely counterintuitive.
I am not like a ride or die like Democrat. I would even say I think not being anti-Trump has made me feel more like I'm more I ride full Democrat, but I'm more about, like, my whole thing is issues and policies, and this whole law and order thing. I mean, if you believe in law and order, then you should have a president who follows the law and helps bring things in order when things are going crazy, batshit crazy, right? Like,
it is amazing that the Joe Biden America thing is sticking at all. Like, I'm Donald Trump standing in front of a burning building, and this is Joe Biden's America, who has no power right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not real. And even the trend recently on social media has been people living in these cities where the fear mongering of, like, it's not safe, it's on fire, is going around, posting pictures of them in the park and, like, nothing's burning down. Like, New York City is still safe. You're not gonna go to New York City and get shot the way that that side is trying to push that narrative. What you said, like, if law and order, if screaming that is the goal, like, let's actually have that.
Yeah, so this is a tough, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think more conversation like this, and I'm a big proponent of, like, if I was somehow a part of the Republican campaign, I just think the way to get more moderate Republicans, and I even think independents is to start accepting some diversity as a real conversation. This election, millennials have now surpassed boomers as the dominant generation in this voting. This is the last really, I think, strong arm that boomers have when it comes to voting. You know, 1 of every 10 person who's voting is going to be a Generation Z, and that group is getting older.
If they show up.
Yeah, if they show up. Yeah. Register, legally allowed to vote 1 of 10. And the other thing too about it is if you're 18 or under, there's more non-white Americans than white Americans. So I just think, and even it goes back to one of our first episodes with Dr. Dixon, who he's, was an Elizabeth Warren supporter, is I think naturally progressive and liberal, but oftentimes what that means though is he's also was very government and for-profit partnerships is the way we're going to solve these problems. It's not just betting down on the government. And I think you see that's like a very independent feel where a lot of independents are like very socially forward, but then also like, I believe the government is needing to figure out their stuff and do better, and public-private partnerships is the way to go. And that, I think, there's something there that if you got a more modern, younger Republican who was less attached to the Chipotle menu of Republican of abortion, Christianity, cops, and law and order, and something more modern about how to bridge a gap between government and private sector and showcase more innovation and more future, that could be a scary candidate. But right now, I think it's going to be interesting what happens after Trump. Even if he wins, it's going to be interesting what happens after, because I'm afraid that this old school Republican party is going to start going down like the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well, and they didn't even adopt a platform this year. Yeah. Like historically, when you look at like the rise and fall of political parties, when you stop adopting a platform and just say we're blindly supporting this one human being, that's typically when we see them start to fall. So I agree with you there. It'll be really interesting to see how these House districts in Tarrant County go down, especially since a couple of the more competitive ones will be out in the suburbs and in Aledo and places that you tend to associate more with conservative areas. So it's a big election for a lot of reasons, but Tarrant County specifically, because of those 5 seats, honestly really dictates a lot of the future of Texas politics.
Yeah. So we'll keep it up, and we're going to look to do in October more around the election and just keeping more of a pulse, having hopefully some guests around this space that really knows Tarrant County politics, and really excited to just continue to explore how this pans out. I think it's time to like really kind of get ready for our wins and losses of Fort Worth this week. And I'm going to let you kind of run it with your first win, which I think is an exciting one. I was really excited to read this story when it came out.
Yeah, so Fort Worth has made its bid to be the home to Space Force. So the newest branch of the military is looking for a permanent home, and Fort Worth seems like a natural fit. There's obviously a lot of aviation that happens already here with Lockheed Martin, and the whole Alliance area has a major hand in commercial cargo traffic in the United States. So Fort Worth has made its bid. I think we would be a natural fit, and that'd be a really cool thing to have a branch of the military actively based here.
Yeah, the U.S. Space Command to protect the United States interests in space. That just sounds cool.
Really, what I hope is that it would mean that Steve Carell and Space Force would make season 2 of filming, make Fort Worth their home for that.
I love it, and a lot of it makes sense because we have our naval base. We're close to there. You also have we're close to the airport. We're in the center.
We have so much undeveloped land. For being a city our size, Fort Worth offers really the best opportunity for undeveloped land in the country. So if they're looking to come out here and build a big area, we have the space to do it. And it's a similar pitch to what we made to Amazon and having their second home be here. I think it's a natural fit. Yeah.
And I mean, going to, looking at the Lockheed Martin numbers, there's 16,400 employees at the aeronautics plant in Fort Worth, and about 10,000 of those workers are high-tech fields such as engineering, science, and mathematics. And also what's really cool here is, they have another 3,500 employees in missiles and fire control plant in Grand Prairie. The qualifications are you have to be one of the 150 largest metropolitan areas. Fort Worth's number 13, within 25 miles of a military base. The Naval Air Station is 5 miles from downtown. And a livability index score of at least 50 out of 100 based on the AARP's Public Policy Institute. Fort Worth ranks 53 above Houston and San Antonio, which was also on the list, and they were at 50. I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
I also feel like it might feel a little Law and Order to me.
Yeah. What immediately came to mind for me was that there was a ranking that ranked Allen, Texas as the #1 place to live in the United States a couple years ago, or maybe it was last year, which my wife grew up in Allen. My in-laws live in Allen, and it's a fine place to live. But yeah, it has the Law and Order vibes written all over it.
Yeah, so we'll see with that. I mean, my whole thing with Houston is you got NASA.
I just think it says a lot that we are actively throwing our name in the hat for opportunities like this. Fort Worth is looking for major companies, major organizations to relocate to the city, to bring jobs, to really stimulate a lot of the growth that's going on. And so whether we get this or not, it shows a focus on how we grow the area.
Yeah, kudos to this. I feel really proud for Tarrant County and Fort Worth this week. We're doing our thing during this crisis to continue to make our county better. What do you have for your loss?
Loss, it's sort of like a semi-win loss, but there is a new boutique hotel that it had its zoning change at a city council meeting this last week. It is less than a mile away from Hotel Dryce, which Jonathan Morris is developing. And there was a lot of hoopla around Jonathan being able to change an empty warehouse into something to develop. I didn't hear a lot of hoopla around this, and I feel like we know why. It sucks that, granted, this is across the street, so I guess technically it's Monticello and not Arlington Heights. Mm-hmm. I struggle to believe it's that much more progressive than the neighborhood across the street. Obviously Jonathan got the approval, is in the process of building this. It is a good thing that we are focusing on this in the area, especially right around Dickey's Arena. I would just call it a loss that there was not the line of hundreds of people defending an empty warehouse that could be turned into a strip club. Yeah. It's one of those very apparent things of where Fort Worth still is in a lot of ways.
I'm really interested to see how this local hotel thing happens. It seems like a trend coming around. And honestly, for me, I do a lot of Airbnb, and I know Fort Worth has Airbnb issues, which we talked about post our conversation last week.
Yeah, if you want to get me passionate about something, we can talk about Fort Worth restricting Airbnbs and how that makes it a very unappealing place for young people to travel.
Hey, but I think we have time. I'd love to hear what that means. I mean, because I feel like, and that's what's interesting. I don't know if that's a stronger play for hotels like Hotel Dryce that may be because Fort Worth is being finicky with Airbnbs, but what's your take?
Yeah, so it is illegal or against city code to run a short-term rental in any residential place in Fort Worth. What that means is that if you own your house, you cannot put it on Airbnb or VRBO unless it is for a full-time renter. Obviously, those are the ways that young people travel right now. If we want to be a more attractive tourist place, we have to put ourselves out there as somewhere that is accommodating to these things. A lot of the cons around short-term rentals fall into that same Law and Order thing of they're not actually based on anything. It's just based on people's perceived comfort. From personal experience, once code compliance comes and gives you a warning or a notice, there is a steep fine if you do not comply. It goes against the whole idea of not having big government that a lot of people in office here advocate for. But two, it really does advocate against people trying to make Fort Worth attractive for younger traveling generations.
And you also say, I mean, that goes back to kind of like how much tug and pull do we do with supporting corporate institutions that are important to our downtown, like our hotels. But it seems like there's this grapple hold there that they're trying to protect that, because we're also, I know Fort Worth's always very active on trying to get convention center space. And I wonder if there's just like that battle there, that there's a fear there in Fort Worth that if we prevent these, if we allow Airbnb to happen, do we start becoming less attractive to the people we're trying to bring in?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there is a lot of like hard data against that.
Yeah.
But this, again, isn't necessarily a conversation between hard data and hard data. It's more hard data and keeping money in certain people's pockets.
Yeah.
Which is obviously frustrating for homeowners that try to do it. It's not actively policed, but once if a neighbor doesn't like it, if they go tell code compliance, like, you're done. Yeah. And there are steep fines if you don't stop. So I do think it would be really awesome for local people to be able to develop these smaller, more intimate hotel spaces. But now, obviously, we see one person is doing it, and we already have developers coming in to mimic that in the stockyards, and now 2 blocks away. So I feel like it's just going to be the developers that take over.
Yeah. And that's the problem with a lot of things. So yeah, I mean, I know we only have a couple more minutes left, so I'm going to hit my wins and losses. My win is that I think I want to give a big congratulations to Fort Worth ISD as a team. I know they changed their ways of doing school online, and they changed their platforms. They're using a platform called Edgenuity that really didn't allow for a lot of live conversations and really empowering digital live experiences for teachers. And so now they're doing Google Classrooms and more Google Meets, and allowing to kind of create virtual classrooms and provide more of a live schedule for kids. And I think it is going really well. And also what's really going well is that, in-person school is right around the corner, October 5th. Hopefully they do that, and we see how that goes. They're going to be flexible, see how it goes. But I think if there is a second wave, because these college kids keep acting a fool.
38,000 cases in the last week across the U.S. at universities. Yeah. Like, come on, guys. I know that decision making in college isn't great, but this is about more than just you.
Yeah, and I don't know if I think I saw it now, 45,000 cases already. Like, and it's, and the CNN, I don't know, that CNN video where the kid's like, yeah, we got COVID, he got COVID. Yeah, we're just quarantining together, turning up.
Yeah, that house in Miami. Well, and there's
Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, there's a really bad video at Florida State yesterday, which also Florida State students are in the stadium for football games without masks on. Like, come on.
So we'll see how that goes. I'm just kudos to Fort Worth ISD for innovating and making distance learning work. My loss, honestly, I don't have a crazy loss. I mean, my loss is more maybe getting into the subliminalness. I find it very interesting that Star Telegram wrote a depth editorial about Fort Worth PD and the police association, did some great journalism, and there was some slack and pushback from Fort Worth PD and the police association. And now I just feel like my news is all about deaths, shots, crime. And I'm not saying we don't have those crime and those stories, but I shouldn't wake up on a Sunday morning and say, what is going on in Fort Worth? And that's all I see. And so much that you dig for a story where we have, something around like 23 children who were, who've been to the hospital because of gun violence. And I just think, I don't know. I want to challenge Star Telegram to just, there's a lot going on in Fort Worth, and let's not, this to me is reinforcing, and sure, maybe it's the market play. Maybe we're like, hey, our readers like this stuff. And That's how you create fear rather than understanding. And there's a lot more going on in these communities and in our community that should be getting highlighted. So that's it's not more of a loss and more of like, let's just be aware and let's, challenge our subconscious.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But hey, overall, Fort Worth, what a great week. Excited as the weather is changing. This is awesome.
I mean, this is wild. Like, I remember last year, October 1st, it started to feel like this. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're a month early. This year, it's like September 1st, we're feeling like this. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. I feel like we're going to get 100 degrees in November as like payback for a nice week in September.
Yeah, it's been great. And and we'll see. And football it's weird. All this sports coming up and it's weird that it's starting. I don't mind watching a little foosball later tonight.
Yeah. And one thing we didn't hit on earlier is that Arlington will also be home to the World Series and the NL playoff bubble, or at least a big part of it. And even though people obviously won't be there, it's a bubble, that still brings a lot of attention to the area. So that's another win for the area, especially when it comes to big events.
Yeah. And I wonder, a kudos, maybe this has to be with us, less density. A lot of these other places that might be able to participate, you have to be in fear mode, and they can't participate in saying yes to these things the way Texas can. And so we're taking advantage as a state with our infrastructure, our business acumen, and how we set up as a state. And I think it's a good time for Texas to get people here for things when people are craving to do something safely. And so this is a good chance for Texas and Tarrant County to shine. So kudos.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right, people. You guys have a great week. Thank you for listening to 817. We'll see you next time.
Adios.